You have probably never seen a lens like this. It is bright purple, tiny, and the manufacturer claims it creates explosive bokeh. I have tested a lot of cinema lenses over the years. Big, small, expensive, affordable, but none of those are quite like this. And it is not just the design and how this thing looks, it's also the image from the glass inside. But above everything else, the main thing I'm trying to work out is if I love this lens or hate it. So let's get straight into the question I know I personally had when I first seen this lens, and that is, what is explosive bokeh? Now, I have been testing this lens for a couple of months now, and I think I've gotten to the bottom of the mystery. But in all honesty, I don't think it is a simple, straightforward answer, and the best place for us to start is by showing you some footage. So when I first started shooting on this lens, my initial thoughts went straight to like Helios, vintage background swirl, like so many other modern lenses have tried to copy. But there is actually so much more than that to this lens. It is actually a combination of two different things happening in the same image. And it creates this like POV dream tripper effect. And what this effect is really good at is drawing your attention to whatever is in the center of the frame, where it stays relatively clean and sharp. So let me try and demonstrate what I actually believe is happening inside the lens on this paper here. This first box here is our 16:9 frame, which is the most common ratio for when capturing video. And in the center of the frame, roughly 40% of the image, it stays pretty much unaffected. Clean and sharp, depending on how wide open your aperture is, but a little bit more on that later. Then around that clean center area, let's say 20 to 30% more of the image, you get the classic vintage swirl bokeh. But that still leaves another 30 to 40% of the image. And this is what I believe the manufacturer is referring to when they say explosive bokeh. It's kind of a mix between a radial blur and a zoom blur, and what it essentially does is pulls everything outwards away from the center. As you can see, anything that lands in this explosive zone gets dramatically warped and distorted. Light orbs especially start doing some really interesting stuff. And here is my first pushback or negative for this lens, and it is all to do with that explosive bokeh zone. To be called bokeh, you really have to only be applied on the stuff that is past the focus plane. But what happens with this lens is anything in the last 30 to 40% of the image, that kind of explosive zone, is just totally affected, whether it is in focus or out of focus. This though is not true for anything in the kind of center and the swirly vintage area. That is only applied to stuff that is in focus. So you've kind of got this center circle area, which is only affecting the stuff in the bokeh area. And then as soon as it reaches that explosive zone, it just kind of distorts anything that is in the image. But as I mentioned, this is very dependent on where your aperture is. When you're wide open at t2.9, this is going to be the most extreme version of this effect. And as you close those aperture blades, bringing down your aperture, it gets much more cleaner. You can almost think as your aperture as like an opacity slider for the effect, but just at the cost of light. As when you close those aperture blades, your image will get darker. Now, I don't think we need to run this through the typical cinema lens test due to how wild the optical design actually is, so to save us all time, I will quickly brush over them. It does have some chromatic aberration, but due to how wild the optics are, you pretty much will never notice them. Minimum focus distance on this 37mm I've been testing is pretty damn good, as you can see in this shot here. And finally, I don't think I need to say this, but does it have vignetting and distortion? Yes. Now, I'm guessing if you've made it to this point right here, you're now wondering what this lens is called, who makes it, and how much it actually costs. So let's find out. So this lens I have been testing here is a 37mm focal length with a wide open aperture of a t2.9. This is a cinema lens, meaning that there is no electronics whatsoever inside of the lens itself. And it only comes in one singular colour, which is this bright purple as you've already seen, and I must be honest that when I read this on the spec sheet I thought I was going to absolutely hate it, but when it turned up in person and I've visually seen it, it is so much more impressive. It just makes the lens feel that little bit more special. I know that it's got a really kind of interesting optical design, but also being bright purple and solid metal design just takes it that little bit further. It only comes in PL mount, which is bad and good because you're going to need an adapter, but it also means it's going to work on every single brand of mirrorless camera. It has a 72mm front filter thread, which means you're going to have no issue getting on an ND filter or any other filters you may want. And this is pretty damn tiny as well. It comes in at under 350 grams. And even when you pair it up with a PL adapter, I often use this Morphage bokeh adapter, which is almost identical colour of purple. That's some OCD heaven right there. Yeah, even when paired with this filter though, which is one of the larger ones as it has built-in ND filter just here on the side, even when paired with a larger one like this, it still only really feels like, say, a 24 to 70mm. So this lens is called the Flora Bloom, and it is manufactured and made by 7 Artisan. It varies depending on which region you are in terms of price, but it is around 400 USD. I will place a link in the top of the description to find out exactly how much it's going to cost delivered to your door, and just underneath it I'll also put a link to this Morphage bokeh adapter. But before we wrap up, there are still a couple of questions that need answering, like who is this lens made for and who should buy it, and what are the stuff that I don't like about this lens. If I'm being fully transparent here, I still can't work out whether I love or hate this lens, but maybe that is what makes it truly special. In an industry which is saturated by truly amazing lenses, we have photography lenses which now shoot incredible video, we have budget cinema lenses which pretty much all look beautiful. Maybe it is time we started stepping out of the box, making lenses that divide people and do something truly different, giving us extra and exciting tools that are going to help us tell different stories. I actually think that it's super impressive and important that 7 Artisan went through and designed, manufactured and released a lens that is so different like this. And I think moving into the future, this is going to do amazing things for their overall brand image. And honestly, I just hope they make more with different styles and interesting effects. Is it a perfect lens for what it's meant to do? No. My biggest con would be that the explosive bokeh happens to absolutely everything. I think it would be super impressive if that only happened to stuff behind your subject that was in focus, because this does actually limit framing. If you are trying to place a subject or a location or something in your frame that is identifiable, not distorted, it pretty much always has to be center of the frame. And another small thing here will be the lens cap. I almost want to praise this lens cap as it is solid metal and kind of just works into how special this lens feels. But what I've noticed over the last couple of months is as I've been chucking it in my bag, kind of capped on the front of the lens, it's kind of scratched off the purple metallic colouring. This though has only happened to the lens cap and not the body of the lens itself, as I believe they're kind of coated differently because they've been in the same bag, always been together, and the body of the lens is perfect, but the lens cap is starting to scratch. So who should actually buy this lens? Well, if you're someone who picks up vintage glass because you like the way it does different stuff to your frames and images, well, this lens is going to be perfect for you. But even past that, maybe everyone should consider buying this lens. In an industry that is well oversaturated with a 24 to 70mm attached to a mirrorless lens just shooting 90% of the work out there, or even now we've got iPhones coming through where everyone's shooting on identical sensors and lenses, maybe something like this placed a couple times in your project could make you stand out. You do need to keep your expectations in check when purchasing this lens. Like, you're not going to buy this and shoot an entire project on it like it be your only lens, but There's the typical kind of, if you're shooting a dream sequence, this is going to be the best lens ever. But also I like it past that. I like the idea of having your opener, your establishing shot for a location, maybe even like a super detailed shot if you really want to tell the story and draw the viewer's attention to a certain object. This could be a really interesting way to do that frame. I will definitely be keeping this lens inside of my kit and in my lens box, not purposely taking it to know what I'm going to shoot, but when the timing's right and I know this frame could be made more interesting, I will 100% use it. But if you are someone who is after a 35mm that is not as extreme as this, you should watch this video right